Welcome to Cinemaphile, where we showcase the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers and talk to them about their work. I'm your host, Mike Kaspar. You can listen to other interviews by going to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar at Spotify. After a series of plagues and wars, society is in ruins. The Freemans are surviving and even thriving on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so long as they repel the occasional raiding party. Former soldier Hailey and her partner Galen fled the collapse along with their children, training them to fight. I'm going to leave it there. There's just a lot in this particular film called 40 Acres, and exciting, involving. There's a political edge to it. There's a lot to be appreciated in 40 Acres, and we're joined today by the director as well as co-writer, along with Glenn Taylor, of 40 Acres, and that would be R.T. Thorne. R.T., welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. I also quickly want to remind people that it is currently in theaters. It will be eventually rolling into our streaming services, but right now, if you can see it, would have to be a thrill to see on a big screen, because there's a lot of action and it's shot very well. So just want to let people know that.
Thank you.
This Genesis, the story, I believe was a story first, and then you and Glenn took it to what we see on screen. Is that right?
Truthfully, I was kind of kicking around. I've been a cinephile for most of my life. Used to go to a lot of films with my mother and one of my aunts who come up from Michigan and take us to the film festival. And so I always wanted to. I think anybody who's a filmmaker, the dream is to have a film, to make a film and have something to say. And started in the music video world. I moved into the television world, but those aren't sort of like, your own voice, you're often sort of just making filmmaking for other people. I was trying to get some film projects off the ground, but they weren't mine. They were scripts that I was getting, and I wasn't really happy with the writing, and just they weren't speaking to me personally. So with this film, it just started with this idea about wanting to have a conversation about a particular time in my life, uh, you know, between my mother and I. My mother basically raised my brother and I generally on her own. And, there was a particular time, I think it's kind of a universal time. I think it's every young person, they bump up against their parents' rules. It's that generational conflict that happens, I think, in everybody, in every teenage, life. And my mother was a very heavy influence on me. She was, very much everything. She was a very strict disciplinarian. She wasn't a military killer. I'm not going to call her that, but she was a tough cookie. She was a tough cookie, and she really cared about our education and a lot of the things that happen in the film. These things like her being an archivist, a historian, wanting her children to learn about their history was vital to my mother. So she also made us do book reports. While we were while we were in school, she would make us read other books and history and Octavia Butler, and just like made us become critical thinkers while we were also in school, because to her, what she would always say, I don't trust these institutions to teach you, about your history. So a lot of that stuff was stuff that was about my mother, and I wanted to have a conversation about that kind of a relationship. But then I kind of wanted to take that universal conflict and kind of project it. I'm a genre kid. So I love thrillers, I love science fiction, I love horror, I love action. And I wanted to project that relationship into a future where the stakes are the highest you can imagine, where, staying out late one night against your mom's wishes might be your death, you know what I'm saying? So I just thought it would be a fun thing to put together. And then the more I got into it, the more a lot of the historical references and these things that my mom used to teach us really started to become really relevant to the story itself. It sort of worked its way in there.
Well, this film has all of that you just described. It brushes up against the genre of sort of the zombie sort of we're completely fixated on the future and sort of the Walking Dead kind of thing. And
Sure.
there's a sort of a version of that in the film that
Mhm.
informs the outside world.
Yes. Yes.
And there's no zombies, but there are people who are zombie-like in their behavior, shall we say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know, I understand the dynamic you're describing. Huge
Yes.
influence in my life. It's very relatable. It's just all very relatable. That's the other thing. All of the characters that we see develop, and I can't go any further without just complimenting Danielle Deadwyler on her performance. It's amazing. She's
Incredible.
amazing. She is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm getting back to just because I will be talking about her at length more because she's so powerful in the film. All of these ways in which you're able to integrate a lot of different elements, but none of them dominate the film.
Hmm.
I felt like all of the things that you introduced in terms of the family dynamics, the outside world, the sort of apocalyptic version moving forward, the references, the historic references, the relationship outside the farm with the people in the farm. I thought all of those things worked in concert. I really felt there was a nice blend throughout the film.
Thank
Let's
you for
talk a
that,
little bit
man.
about what, sort of you and your collaborators, how you went about approaching this telling of this story in that way.
Thank you for that. And it's something that we worked very hard on. I love films that have layers to them, that you go to, you have an experience, and then you walk away sort of thinking about a lot afterwards. And I think that's the kind of cinema that I love. So I think that I really wanted to make something that could do that for people that could be entertained. If you wanted surface level, go ahead. We'll give you some thrills and some chills and but if you do like to think about things, I'll give you a few things to think about. And I think the main thing that we really tried to do the most was just like we're not trying to hit anybody over the head with a message. There are messages in there, but I'm not trying to hammer them home for you. I really feel like we just wanted to drop you into these characters' world and sort of let their lives in this moment give you these elements. The characters are naturally talking about some of the history that as it pertains to their farm. That just happens to be something that they have to talk about in that moment. It's not for the audience necessarily. It's actually for the character. That's the mom. It's your mom telling you, you don't know how it was that I brought you here and what I had to do this. It's that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
again, it's trying to make some of this stuff happen naturally for the characters. I think the humor comes from the characters. It's circumstantial. I like that kind of writing, so I really wanted to do that. And again, the film really stays with these characters. We
Yeah.
don't really understand much about the outside world. There's not a huge amount of explanation. We just started off by saying, this is what happened to the world, and then you're just with this family. So, and I like doing that because it places the audience with them in the rooms with them as they're going through what they're going through, and hopefully you start to fall for these people as you spend a lot of time with them. So yeah, it was something that, Glenn Taylor and I really worked on. We had a massive amount of drafts of the script. We probably wrote somewhere around 45 to 50 drafts of the script over the course of about 5 years almost. I had the story, in my head that I wanted to do something, like I said, that was a mother-son relationship as a core. And then it harkened back to a little bit of I was born out west in Canada, in Alberta. So it's farmland areas. I wasn't from a farm, but I was farm adjacent. My father worked in the produce industry. So, I just had a real connection to how important it was for people to have a symbiotic relationship with the land and understand how it can produce and provide for us if we treat it right. So that was always something that I was very interested in exploring as well, making farmers heroes in a story. And no better place to make farmers heroes than in post-apocalyptic world where, famine is rampant, and if you don't know how to work the land, you're in trouble. So that sort of collection of things all swirled together in the script phase.
And I will tell you, just anecdotally, I think moving forward, if you do not know how to farm
Yeah.
on even just a small scale, you're foolish at this point because
Yeah.
I don't think it, and I don't think I'm being doomsday here. I just think just we've seen so much disruption of late that it certainly isn't such a bad. And it's not like it's. I mean, it's you have to know how to farm, you have to know how to do it right. But
Yeah.
yeah, all of this thing, all of these. That's one of those again a minor key in a way, but it resonates with people as they're watching. They're just this is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
very real.
You look, I can't lie that that became very, look, as we wrote the script, then the pandemic hit, and we
Exactly.
all went through that together, even though we feel separate. And it was during that time, my wife and I were, about to have our first son, and it was one of those things where I really just started thinking about, I'm like, wow, what I'm writing is very real
Yeah.
and to the point where you couldn't go to the grocery and get fresh fruit and vegetables. It really started to make me think, do I actually know how to provide for myself if this all goes away? And if, I'm sure you remember the first year of that pandemic was like everybody was like, we were all we weren't sure everything was going to
This,
go how it was going to go, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah, yeah.
And we were very suspicious of each other. I remember being in public places and people were coughing next to you and you're getting angry at them for no reason. Like, they're just doing normal human stuff and so we were very paranoid about each other, sharing space together. And so a lot of that stuff trickled right into the script and became very, very real. And like you said, it's just as soon as I started doing research more so because I was like, I better learn how to grow some tomatoes and some squash and some corn and some
That's
beans,
exactly.
because
Tomatoes,
I don't
squash.
know.
I think I can grow tomatoes, squash, and probably corn. But that's
Yes.
it. That would
Yeah.
be my diet, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there's another thing about it, and I want to talk about the characters in the film because you have the
Okay.
family, you have certainly, and one of the things about living in a world where we're bombarded by cinema, growing up in a world of cinema, and I over time our perception of characters evolves. And one of the characters that I think of, like films like Mad Max, there's a lot of films that acclimate you to the idea that younger and younger people are capable of being
Mm,
able to defend themselves in these
mm,
circumstances. There's sort of an evolution in our understanding, or at least our appreciation of that. And that's
sure.
an element in this film. It's not a, it's a rather big part of the film is that
Mhm.
the younger members of the family can handle themselves. To me, that's a cinematic reference. I don't, what I mean. I just feel like the what I'll call it, the language of cinema evolves, and
Sure.
a kind of a perception of cinema. And I think you take good advantage of that in this film.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely something that I think when you grow up in a household like what my mom told me about her childhood in Trinidad and just growing up with siblings and the siblings are raising the younger siblings, you know what I mean? Because those families were very they were hard up, man. They didn't have resources and so having to be taught survival skills, fishing, to provide for yourself at a very young age. And I think, yeah, I take that kind of lifestyle. We don't live that kind of lifestyle very much in sort of the North
Yeah.
America.
First world, no problem. First
Yeah,
world. You get to
yeah.
second and third world, this is a necessity. This is a
Exactly,
way of life.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, when I think about post-apocalyptic worlds, it goes right back to that kind of a time period. And, to me, when we think about Hailey, who is a military veteran, she's seen the worst of the worst in her lifetime. She's absolutely going to make sure that her children are capable of defending themselves and of surviving. That's literally her. That's what she says. That's what her job is to Manny. Yeah, and what that brings is probably a so-called loss of childhood, what people would think of normal childhood is now in a very privileged way that we live in this
Yeah.
North American culture. But in that time, it's an absolute necessity. And that is something that we actually it didn't make the cut in the movie, but there was a whole storyline as it pertains to the youngest child, with Hailey reckoning with that a little bit because obviously when these kids have to be able to commit violence and sometimes really, really horrible violence, somehow how that's going to affect them is gonna resonate throughout their lives. And so I wanted to comment about that as well. And you see some of that at the very beginning with how regular what they do seems to be to these young kids. And so it's definitely a sort of a darker aspect of the film, but it's one that I wanted to kind of touch on. Yeah.
Well, you set that in motion right pretty quickly in the film. That notion that these kids, what they're capable of. That's kind of
Yeah.
pretty close to the beginning of the film. So from that point moving forward, everything else that unfolds feels completely part of the organic
Mhm.
part of the
Mhm.
storytelling. So that was terrific. Well, first of all, I want to remind our listeners we're speaking with R.T. Thorne. He is the director and co-writer, executive producer of this terrific film called 40 Acres. It's being released through Magnolia Pictures. It's currently in theaters as we speak, but it will see it in the theater. I'm just going to leave it there because
Please, please
it's a
do.
big picture. It's a big picture. You can't help but notice that this is filling up the screen with a lot of imagery and a lot of things that are happening, and it'd be great to see it on the biggest screen you can. So, and I want to talk about the cinematography because I really you put him through the paces. We've got Jeremy Benning. You put him
Sure.
through a lot in this film.
Jeremy can handle it.
Well, apparently,
Jeremy is an old buddy of mine. Truthfully, to that point, we had not worked together, but we knew each other coming on probably about a decade of time. We both started in music video and commercial world. We had always, crossed paths and were, fans of each other's work. And then he was doing some heavy work in television land for a long time on a series called The Expanse. And I was a big fan of the cinematography of that show. And so when time came around that I had something that I would like to throw at him, he was just spontaneously available, and we jumped at the opportunity to work together. Like I said, we come from music videos, so we know how to shoot fast, and we're very, and I think the great thing is that both of us have a very photographic eye, and we're very intent in presenting this world, placing you in the world, making it intimate, but then also making it feel large and expansive and beautiful. It's a really dark and kind of, we're talking about dystopia, and I just wanted it to have these moments of beauty that I feel happen in nature normally. When you're walking around on a farm, you'll be in the middle of of a cornfield, and the sun will just peek through the sky above, and it'll be just this beautiful still moment,
and
and
then
then some other
and then
stuff
the
can
mayhem.
happen, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking of that actually. One of the first scenes in the film was these people marching towards the residence of the house, and I was just thinking setups. There was just had to be a ton of setups in that
Oh yeah.
cornfield. It was a lot.
Oh yeah. And we shot that over the course of actually like 2 or 3 days. We shot a lot of the cornfield stuff in a separate farm because I don't have Christopher Nolan's budget, you know what I'm saying? So we're not planting 40 acres of corn. So
Yeah.
we were very limited on the farm that we did have in terms of corn. So we actually went to a cornfield and shot in a cornfield for a large part of that, and then did another day on our farm.
Yeah, and then a lot of the rest of the film is in darkened spaces. There's a
Yeah.
lot of, color variation and even within the house and some of the other places that
Mhm.
you see them in. So I just was, can't help it. My eye goes to that kind of thing when I'm watching a film now, and it's
I
part of my
appreciate that. And my
part of my
production designer, Peter Costco, who did Sarah Pauli's Women Talking, he did a wonderful job with our palettes and creating this historical farm, that's been around for
Well,
almost.
I really I'm thrilled that we got a that I had an opportunity to see this film, to see 40 Acres, and I just yeah, it's fun. That sounded
I
wrong.
appreciate that.
I
Yeah.
didn't come out exactly the way I wanted to do. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun to watch, a lot going on. There is real pathos in the film, great acting. I mean, and also I did say I was going to talk about. I want to make sure I'm saying it.
Yeah.
Kataem, am I saying that right? Kataem O'Connor.
Yes, Kataem. Yeah.
Kano.
Yeah.
Kano's terrific. I mean, you need him to be as, when he's matching up with
Yeah.
mom to be
Yeah.
able to pull all of that together. And also dad, is that Galen? Is that Michael
That's Galen.
Greyeyes?
That's Michael Greyeyes. Yeah.
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 That's a really solid foundation for the characters in the film, the development.
It was a blessing to have Danielle jump on board and just lend us her incredible talent and inhabit this really powerful and loving woman, and then to have Michael be the yin to her yang, and kind of ground us in sort of a warm he's a warm sensibility about him. He's a father that can take care of some of the kids in a really beautiful way. He's the cook. He's about, them understanding who they are, but then he can take care of business as he does.
Very good. Well, he's
And
the nurturing side of this
yes, he is.
triangle.
Yes, he is. Yes,
So
he is. Yes, he is.
yeah,
And
and
then
yeah,
well, Kataem was just he's just a find, man. He's an actor who just hadn't got a chance to do a lot of really deep stuff, and his audition just knocked us out. And yeah, his work is just beautiful. It's beautiful.
and it's nice to see his character grow into what
Yeah.
we see it grow
Yeah.
into. So
Yes.
see all of this. Congratulations, R.T. Thorne. This is a terrific film. It's called 40 Acres. Again, it's out on Magnolia Pictures in theaters now. I know I'm not even going to say, we will be on the usual suspects, right? When it
Yeah.
rolls
Yeah.
out into streaming, we'll see it on
Yeah.
a lot of different platforms. Be looking for it, see it on a big screen. Magnolia is a great distributor, and you should support everything that they put out, and especially 40 Acres. R.T., thank you so very, very much for your time, and appreciate your work. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the beautiful conversation.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile. I'm your host, Mike Kaspar, and you can listen to previous interviews as well as special programming, or you can subscribe by going to Cinemaphile, that's F-I-L-E, with Mike Kaspar, at Spotify. Until next time, thank you for listening.